So wow, that's way too long an introduction for that. I didn't think they would actually take my entire life and put it up there. Yeah, so SUNY ESF, great school. It's a hidden gem in the New York State school system. I got a junior in high school who's looking at schools right now. And so what's great about it is that you pay state tuition and you get to use all of Syracuse University's facilities, all their libraries, all their gym facilities. When I was there in grad school, I was taking 700 level law classes at SU and paying state tuition. Tell me that's not a good deal. So we didn't come here to talk about SUNY ESF. I'm going to wander around a little bit because I like to wander. Really appreciate Steve and the rest of the folks here having me here, and all of you to get up early. For those of you that were out commuting last night, and we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of stuff today. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you, and what I'm hoping to do today is really kind of just get the conversation going. That's why you'll see a lot of different things that show up here, because my intent for being here today is I want everybody here to see themselves in the picture. Because I talk about geospatial intelligence all the time, and one of the first things I tell people is that GeoInt is a team sport, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So what is USGIF? United States Geospatial Intelligence Foundation. We are, in fact, a 501c3 educational nonprofit dedicated to the advancement of the GeoInt tradecraft. So what is it that we do? There's the list. The top three are the things that I'm personally responsible for. So we actually accredit programs in geospatial intelligence, and those are certificate programs. We currently have 14 schools, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Near and dear to my heart is something that we have just launched, and it will go live for sign up on 1 July, which is a GeoInt certification program. This is a professional certification program. We have periodic training and educational offerings throughout the year, and then Steve mentioned the GeoInt Symposium was down in Orlando. Just about 4,000 of my closest friends, including a Sunday where we had a science and technology forum with 4 of our national labs, directors of, it's an incredible opportunity, and we have ways to be able to get students down there, basically on scholarship to come experience that. So if you're a student, or you have a student, or know a student, and they might be interested in doing that, come see me, and we'll talk about that maybe for next year. I put this slide up to give you an idea of the kind of scope and scale of the organizations that we work with. We have 261 currently member organizations. There's a list of our strategic partners. I think if I counted them correctly, there are 31. And so whatever that delta is, I guess that would be 230 that are not strategic partners that are also organizational members. These are very large companies, typically. But there are also a few smaller companies and mid-sized companies that are in here that see value in working with our foundation to be able to understand and help us shape what this community looks like. Another strategic partner is the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Only 4-letter agency that I know that actually has 3 letters, because it's hyphenated. Because why? Anybody know? It's not a hard quiz. It's got to do with cha-ching. 3-letter agencies get money. Simple. I mentioned we accredit geospatial intelligence certificate programs. There's the current list. We just finished another one that we're going to be announcing shortly. That'll be James Madison, excuse me. So these are the 12 that we currently have that are in the U.S. And about a month ago, this is my newest favorite. And my newest favorite after that will be James Madison, because we haven't quite announced that yet. University of Lisbon. Why is it my nearest? Because on the 17th of June, I get to go do the final site visit in Portugal. So somebody's going to have to take that hardship on, and I think that'll be me this time. So what is GeoInt? I get this question a lot. What's GeoInt? I do GIS for a living. How many GIS folks do we have here? Show hands. How many remote sensing folks do we have here? How many folks that would consider themselves data managers or data stewards? Right? How many cartographers do we have here? Guess what, folks? You're all GeoInters. right? So I believe that would be all of them. Whether you know it or not, what you do is actually help people make decisions. You make decisions, you make recommendations, you use geospatial information to actually get to the point where decisions actually get made. Recommendations, decisions. If everything happens sometime at some place, right? I used to work for Mr. Jack Danger. I would be in his conference room out in Redlands, California, preparing presentations typically for senior government officials. And that was a universal theme and has been one of his universal themes since 1969 and will continue to be one. Everything happens at some time at some place. Until we can figure out this way to be able to bend time backwards, time kind of inexorably marches forward. So if you're working in a geospatial-related industry, if you're doing GIS, if you're doing remote sensing, if you're doing data management, if you're doing cartographic work, you're a geoengineer. Oh yeah, there's no shameless plug, but I actually wrote that definition in a book chapter. That book's available somewhere, probably on Amazon or someplace. I have my one copy. Here's a different definition. This is actually an older definition. This definition is the only one that's written into U.S. law. So that quite literally is U.S. Title 10, and that is the definition from which that NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, was formed. There it is. It's a pretty good definition still. But it really only applies to the folks that are in the defense intelligence world, folks that fall under the Title 10 definition. I show this as a prelude to what we're going to get into next, which is a little bit of content. This wordle was derived from the GeoEnt essential body of knowledge that USGIF has spent about a lot of money and about 20 months creating with about 134 subject matter experts from 7 different industries. To include the defense and intelligence world, but that was only about 35% of the folks that participated. Everybody else was from non-defense and intel, on purpose. And I think that the results speak for themselves. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. Whoa, we're doing automatic advance here all of a sudden. This here really is another way to think about the process of doing GeoEnt and what that analysis means. It's really rooted in the GI sciences. It's truly metadisciplinary, and it really, the foundation is geography. Right? How many geographers do we have here? How many people with degrees in geography? 40%, maybe 50%? That's pretty good, right? One of my least favorite things that I saw was about 2 years ago when NASA put out a call for scientists. And very specifically in that call, it said, if you have a geography degree, you need not apply. They're looking for scientists, biological scientists, earth scientists, but if you have a degree in geography, you need not apply. Just think about that for a minute, and then we'll talk STEM later on. Okay, here's the quiz. It's a hard one. Who here doesn't do these things? At least one of them. Yeah, show of 0 hands, for the record, on TV here. Right? These are just a couple of examples. It was one of my favorites, especially since I spelled the word wrong on the title. But see if you can figure that one out. Maybe like the first word. But these are just a couple of examples of non-defense and intel related. I should probably like him to do it on the website and say, hey, you know, okay, I like your journal. But, here's another one that came out of Oil and Gas 360, for those of you that work in the oil and gas industry. This was just another snippet from a commercial organization that DMCII talks about the Earth Observation Constellation and their integration of all the different kind of technologies that they can do. A friend of mine, Steve Wood, founded this company about 6 years ago. He used to work at GeoEye and Digital Globe, and then he went out and basically founded this company that literally takes data from all over the place, including satellite imagery, because it's, you know, it's eye-candy and it looks good. But that's not all he does. And that's what he does, is he has these subject matter experts in all sorts of fields, these geospatial experts that go and do work with them. He's out in Colorado. And even these guys get in there, right? So, they even said, these guys talk about a GIS in the Department of Transportation being underutilized. I find that just baffling. How's that possible, right? A lot of coverage about things that are going on. You start seeing the language. Again, this is not, I'm not here to basically try to sell you on any concept or any topic, but I'm telling you, this idea of geospatial intelligence, it's real. Folks are listening, people are interested, and they're going to get to this old concept of condition of employment. What does that mean? I want to walk you through this one example that I got from our good friends at Digital Globe. I'll let you read the bullets, but the whole idea here is, it's really the first bullet, is that the Associated Press, some folks in the Associated Press have been doing some background work on men being conscripted into working on ships to go basically to do some illegal fishing. And they would literally just take these folks out of their villages and put them getting shanghaied, and they'd throw them on these ships, and they would just disappear, and no one knew where they were. So after a while, what happened was they became sort of a movement. There were a couple other folks that were working. Anybody here know what AIS is? It's the Automated Information Systems on big ships. So if you're, I believe it's 300 tons and above, you actually have to broadcast on the open ocean. And basically it's just a beacon that says, hey, here I am, here I am, here I am. I'm really big, stay out of my way, and I'll try to stay out of your way. So for big ships, especially reefer ships or refrigerated ships, they're going to be over 300 tons and they're supposed to broadcast. So what happens is, occasionally ships turn off these transponders. They go dark. The question is, why? Is it nefarious? Just doing some equipment work? You know, it's hard to really figure that part out. But it certainly is a tip or a trigger to be able to say, hey, I know where they were, they turned it off, let's go look where they might be next. And that's really sort of what this story is all about. So you can see from this particular overhead image, taken by Digital Globe Worldview 3, what happens is these guys will go out there and the captains will literally paint over the names on the ship and will put placards over the names of the ship and put a different flag up, depending on where they are. So that way they know that certain countries allow certain activities. Other countries don't. So what they'll literally do is change the name of the ship, put a different flag up, and they get away with whatever they want to be able to get away with, and they go back into their home port, they do the same thing in reverse. But what ended up happening is, if you can see from the inset image, is that was one of the ways that this particular ship that had its name changed was actually identified, because they actually looked at the mast and the configuration of the ship and said, you know what, that's the same ship that was over here. And what was pretty amazing was, it quite literally is a needle in a haystack kind of problem, is that they went through this set of straits, this area called the Dog Leg, which is out in the South Pacific, just off of Myanmar. And what ended up happening was, Digital Globe flew over, and they took a bunch of shots, and they actually found that needle in the haystack. They found this reefer ship, this refrigerated ship, with these two other ships saddled up next to it that were the conscripted sailor ships that were offloading their illegally obtained fishing cargo into the refrigerated ship. From that, the authorities got involved, and that's the result. Really quite an amazing example of there were, what you don't see in this, right? So we talked about AIS, we talked about overhead imagery. What you didn't see was all the work that the AP guys did, taking all the manifest information and all the location information back on shore. All of that was combined to do all of this analysis over about a 4-month period. And these are the results. Just announced last month. Not bad. That's the power of geospatial intelligence. That's taking all that data, that's putting it all together. It's a team sport. There were dozens of people working on this across multiple disciplines, not in our own little silos, right? I used to work state and local government too, that wasn't on there, and I know how that works, right? And I know we're resource constrained, but this is a terrific example of a lot of people across a lot of different disciplines, and a lot of domains, with a lot of domain knowledge, making it happen. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about language, because language does matter. What's a credential? Who here doesn't have a driver's license? It's a credential. Degrees, right? So here are the different types. A credential could be a credential, literally. It's called a credential. Certification is a type of credential. A certificate, it's good. Quick show of hands. Who has a certificate here in something? Yeah. A lot of folks. More than half. But today, we're going to talk a little bit more about these two specific topics, certification and certificate. We're going to talk a little bit about the Certified G1 Professional and the Universal G1 Professional. That's on the certification, that's the professional certification side. And then we're going to talk about a certificate in geospatial intelligence. That's on the academic side. So you have to ask yourself, do you need a credential? What kind of credential is appropriate, right? We talk about this all the time, right? So how many GISPs do we have here? Smattering. Anybody have any one or more of ASPRS certifications? Curious, which ones? Any CPs here? Oh, God, I love you people because I never see you anymore. Quite literally, you are an endangered species. How about LiDAR certification? Anybody get that one? New one? But all of these considerations, when you start to think about what does it really mean, does it mean anything to your jobs? For those of you that have some sort of professional certification, is it a requirement for your job? How many surveyors do we have here? Licensed surveyors, LPSs, right? None. One. Thank you. We do have some Veritoken surveyors. Requirement for your job? Mm-hmm. How about the rest of the certifications that you have? Requirements for your jobs? Nice to have. Feel good when you got it? Give you a raise? Job advancement? Maybe. If we can't answer those questions collectively, right, or individually, we're going to have to answer them collectively. So what we began doing was taking a look at what this landscape looked at, and we said, okay, so how do we truly create a set of umbrella? I've shown the umbrella before because that's really where we're headed with all this. How do we create a set of meaningful certifications that will become conditions of employment and that will actually have meaning and that will be transportable and transparent? Meaning, you know what's in them, and when you go from job A to job B, it goes with it. Because I can tell you, if I have a GISP and I go to work in Europe, they don't care. What are the benefits of credentialing? It says USGF credentialing, but you can just take USGF and put organization XYZ in there. Or you can say it's for whatever. I think these three pieces, though, as we start talking about it, is that when we talk about our accredited programs, the second two parts go in. So the top piece, any type of credential, that's what they're really looking for, right? Does it give them some surety, right? So my buddy Talbot here, he's one of the first 6 Universal G1 professionals. And that took some effort to get there from him. They had to pass 3 exams. Actually, had to sit for a panel review. Had to document some of the work they had done. But what does it mean for him? What it means is, if you have a certification of any kind, you're a minimally acceptable candidate. A MAC. How many people here like the term minimally acceptable? right? That's my least favorite thing of all the language that I deal with, is talking about what a Mac is. But that's actually a very significant part of a true professional credential, is that you set standards. Right? If you think about it, what's the standard? It's the minimum bar that I have to step over. You can set the standards very high, it's still a minimum bar, is it not? For our academic programs, the idea for having a certificate in geospatial intelligence is to introduce the students to this kind of collaborative way of doing work, and for them to be able to speak the language of geospatial intelligence. That's really those are the two kind of big things that we hope that they leave when they have a piece of paper from us that says, not only do you have your degree, but you actually have a certificate in geospatial intelligence, that you end up with knowledge of the field, not an expert, just introductory, base level, and you can speak the language. Obviously, for the academic side, if I'm in a college or university, I'm interested because it'll hopefully attract students to my schools. So I talked about transparency. Right? I talked about seeing yourselves in the picture. I'm an absolute firm believer. If we can't paint a picture where everybody in this room can see themselves in the painting, in the picture, and it may be a movie, I don't know. But if you can't see yourselves as part of what we're trying to do, then I failed. I've just flat failed to take into consideration the things that are important to everyone in this room. I mentioned transportability, and I tell you what, I'm not sure which one's more important. Because if you have a credential that's great at your job, but you leave your job and go someplace else and it's not any good, right? And the reason this one became a very big deal is because of, we're going to talk a little bit about it, but National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA created their own certification program, and I had a whole other set of slides I can sit and talk to you about that for hours. And the intent was to work together with them to create one certification program. It didn't quite happen that way. So we kind of diverged, and we decided we're going to go and build a certification program that's good for everybody, both inside the defense intelligence enterprise, and everybody in this room, and then everybody internationally. So now we diverged, and now we're coming back together, and we actually have a handshake reciprocity that we'll talk about later on. And it's more than handshake, because the director of NGA actually announced we do have reciprocity. He announced it at our symposium last week. What we specifically set out not to do was build something that was already built. If it already exists, we're working on multiple ways to be able to give you credit, leverage what you already have, without trying to basically own the entire geospatial world. Not what we're trying to do. Trying to create an overall ecosystem, an umbrella that makes sense. Because right now, frankly, we know it, folks. Does it make sense? No. Anybody going to shake their head yes, it makes sense in terms of the way we do geospatial credentialing? I would say that it doesn't. But we really have, I've had very hard, very real conversations with GISCI. I've gone down and actually talked to the board. Mike Howe, was he here? Can't remember. Not this meeting, he'll be at the next meeting. Mike Howe, Executive Director of ASPRS. He and I have regular meetings about how we can fold our programs together. What does it mean? Who gets credit for what? So these conversations are ongoing. We are all committed. This is long term. This is not, oh, we're going to get it done next month or maybe even this year. It might be multiple years before we actually can figure out what it looks like. But just know those conversations are in fact happening. And we are all three of the we organizational folks are committed to doing some level of making sure that we have a reasonable way to be able to describe what the differences are and what the benefits are for everybody. It's not ours or theirs or theirs. This last one, I think, is the key to everything. And when we stepped out on the path to developing our EBK, Essential Body of Knowledge, we based it on 3 documents. And there it is. There's our SME participation right there. You can get this, you can go online to our website and download it. It's a PDF. You want to take a look at what's in there? I may even have a couple copies that I brought with me. But what's important about this is that this has been vetted and then re-vetted and then vetted again. And we, as an organization, USGIF, and me personally, we've pledged, and I continue to pledge, that we will update this thing on an ongoing annual basis. Some piece of this will be reviewed. It might not get changed, but it'll be reviewed. And notice the key word here is the second word. It's not GeoInt, even though that's important. It says essential. Doesn't say complete. Doesn't say everything to everybody. It says essential. It's basically, this is the core that folks around the geospatial world have taken a look at and said, you know what? This is what you should either be able to describe, know, show, do, teach. This is it. This is the stuff. And it's broken down fairly significantly. There it is. So each of the 4 pieces that you see there, I mentioned GIS and analysis tools, remote sensing and imagery analysis, geospatial data management, and in the middle, data visualization. So the first 3 now exist as assessments that we have built. It took us about a couple years to build them after we finished doing the EBK, which took us, like I said, almost 2 years. So each one of those is a separate professional certification. The data visualization one's a little more challenging. We started getting into that one and we said, you know what? How do you assess your ability to do data visualization? If there are anybody out there that actually can tell me the answer to that one, great. We've got a workshop that we're working on right now to be able to actually start probing that. For right now, the data visualization really is kind of sprinkled in the other 3. It's not its own separate certification. At some point in time, it may become a separate certification, but right now it's not. I can let you read this here, but we do have 4 separate certifications, and I mentioned the UGP, and Talbot is one of 6 people in the world that currently hold that designation. Passing all 3 exams, taking and passing all 3 exams by itself, how many people here think that they could sit for 3 exams that are designed for the 3 to 5 year practitioner, not for the uber dude and dudette, basically, that are like the go-to people in your state? Not what we're talking about. We're talking a 3 to 5 year practitioner. You went to college, probably, or came in through GI Bill and basically did something, but you're out in the working world for 3 to 5 years. Could you pass one of these? How many people think they could pass at least one? 3 to 5 year practitioner. Come on. Really? I would say all of you could probably pass one of these, right? No? Heck, I haven't been a practitioner for a while. I could probably pass all of them. Of course, I know what's on them. But I would bet dimes and donuts that all of you can pass at least one of these. Passing 2 of them, a little more daunting. Passing 3 of them means that you've really been working in a collaborative environment. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for team players, folks. And then, if you pass them all, then you actually have to put them, it's not a portfolio, but you have to have them show some demonstration of activities that you have done to contribute to the GeoInt community, writ large, that are outside your normal work. You don't get credit for just your normal work. We actually had a young gentleman pass all 3 exams, and then he said, you know, I really don't do anything outside my normal work, so I'm going to pass on sit for the panel review. Interesting. The reason for the panel review is this, really twofold. One is to make sure that you kind of get it. You understand what this collaboration really means. Because when you go out into the world as a UGP, you're really kind of a spokesperson for the foundation to a great degree. And the second reason for it, and was the strongest reason, was to make sure that you could actually speak to people. You have to be able to communicate. Communication, I tell you what, it's an important part for all 3 of those exams, but you will not pass, and I can tell you that it did happen. If you cannot communicate effectively, you get voted off the island. Communication, well, we always hear about, what's the number one thing we want students out of college to be able to do? Read and write. They have to be able to write. Oh, they have to be able to talk to us. Well, I can tell you, in the geoint world, because there are so many very specific experts at different things, if you cannot communicate vertically, horizontally, horizontally, in your organization, between your organizations, think of the AP example we just got done talking about. Right? How many different organizations? I don't know, 30, 40. If you can't communicate effectively, you're done. You can go do your technical thing, go sit in the corner, and be happy with that. Because that's as far as it will get. We have reached a point in the convergence of technology and communications that communicating between people, inter and intrapersonal skills, are becoming probably even more important than your geospatial capabilities. Want me to say that one again? How many introverts we have here? Believe it or not, I am one. It doesn't look it, but I am. Right? So it depends how much coffee I've had. So I'm an INTP or I'm an ESTJ, depending on how much caffeine I've had. Literally, I've taken it like in the Myers-Briggs a bunch of times. For those who don't do Myers-Briggs, talk to me after. So here's one pathway to consider. You can turn this one literally 90 degrees clockwise and look at it that way also. If you notice the axis on the far right? Certification and pathways to professionalism. We start out in the bottom with USGF accredited programs. So one way, you go into a college or university, we got 14 of them, that has a certificate in geospatial intelligence. And you get that. Then you go out into the working world. And after 3 to 5 years, you pass one or more of the certifications. And you can add other things in here along the way, right? That's the idea, is that we hope to be able to add multiple other certifications in there. And then probably after maybe 10 years of cooking, probably can pass all of them, then you get the UGP. So that's just one view, one potential pathway, but it's a very concrete pathway, one that's backed up by a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise. There are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of experience that went into creating the EBK. Because it actually started out, that EBK, it started out with the BOK and the GTCM and NGA's core competencies. Those are the 3 documents we started with. Remember I said we're not going to build something that's already been built? So that was about 40% roughly, we estimate, of what the content of the Geo and Essential Body of Knowledge turned out to be. We built it on the shoulders of the great work that we've already done. We didn't do it just in a vacuum. Here's another way to look at it. Yellow is training, and the blue is certification. I don't know. There's some nefarious intent going on there, right? So it sort of looks like we've been sort of photoshopped in here, doesn't it? You sort of have, and now it's like any Peter Jackson fans out there. We were actually all standing about in the same area, so it wasn't like somebody was really close and somebody's really far away. Those are literally the size differences between us, we humans, right? I just found that kind of fascinating. Anybody know who that is? Yeah. He knew I was going to do that. He had no idea. Yeah. I mentioned functional equivalence. I mentioned NGA. Here's the term for you. Functional equivalence. Here's what it means. When you create a certification program, there's really 2 piles of people you need to pay attention to. Producers and users. If you create a certification program, you're a producer. Anybody here who has a certification, you're users. And really, the organizations that hired you are users. That's really even more important. That's what, so producer, whoever creates it, user, whoever values the certification. what we effectively done here is actually said, okay, so we did a look at the different underlying, the initial blueprints of what's actually in each one of the certifications. What topics do we talk about? What's the real content? And what it really came down to is that NGA's PL2, or Proficiency Level 2, has this thing called a Geospatial Analyst. That's basically the same as our GIS and analysis tools. We also have a PL2 Imagery Analyst, which is our remote sensing and imagery analysis equivalent. Interestingly, we have quite a bit of image science also in the remote sensing and imagery analysis certification. So it's really kind of those two equal one over here for us. And geospatial data management, it's called exactly the same thing, geospatial data management. Now, the reason I mentioned NGA, it goes back to this idea of condition of employment. NGA is requiring everybody that works at NGA, and there's a lot of people, to become certified. Even contractors. But here's the thing, if you're a contractor, and you're not currently on a contract at NGA, but you might go work there, you can't get tested. That's where we step in. So the idea here is, you're going to get on a contract, or you might get on a contract, or you're working for a company that does work with NGA, but you're not there, you can go get certified by us, and then if you go into NGA to go work, they say, check, remember the user piece? As users, NGA is both a producer and a user. Kind of weird, but they can do that, right? So that's what it means. This is going to be the first time that I've actually seen any place in the geospatial world, I haven't been everywhere in the world, but I've been a number of places, where there's actually going to be a requirement for a certification. Let that one sink in for a minute. An actual requirement for one. And for our schools, this is my pitch to them. Anybody here representing a college or university? Oh, I'm here all day. Love to talk to you. These are ideas. It's a heck of a strong community that you'd be getting into if you decide to become an accredited program. It's not a rubber stamp, but it's also, the bar and the barrier to entry is not terribly high. But you really have to, there's a process. We have accreditation guidelines, and we can talk. If you need to get hold of me, I think, Steve, you're going to post these slides, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't hide. It's my first name dot my last name at usjf.org. Love to hear from you. I'm here until, I don't know what time to leave until.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, right? Okay, so we'll leave around 2, so I'm here all day. So, do we have any time for questions, or am I done?
I would like to go along.
Okay, we're done?
Maybe one question.
We got one question. Anybody want to jump on that grenade? We got one. There. We got 2. We don't take one.
I think one of the what do you mean by outside your normal work? What's normal work?
Okay, good question. The question was, what do I mean outside normal work? So when we talk about being able to show that you've done something that's a contribution to the community outside your normal work. Here's an example. You contributed as an editor to a magazine that was, maybe it was a special edition of PNRS, right? It's outside your normal work, right? But if you created a series of decision support maps, or you created something that's specifically for the work that you're doing, where do you work?
Work for the state.
Work for the state, right? Okay, so if you did something for the state, right? You created a web map for the state. You did an analysis on sex suitability for the state. That's considered your work, right? If you did some volunteer work for your local community and you did something, great. Let's see what it looks like.